You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, December 18th. The 49ers have clinched the NFC West, riding high on a 6-game win streak. Their latest win against the lowly Arizona Cardinals, but it was impressive, even though, it was the Cardinals. We're still going to enjoy it. And there are a number of great performances in this one, which me and my co-host of the day is going to be talking about, and we're going to be nominating 49K Player of the Week with Weston. Weston, how you doing today, man?
I'm great, Steph. Happy to be back on another Victory Monday. But we'll talk about the game. And while there were some things that look pretty good, there were certainly some things that feel like a little unsettling coming into the home stretch here. But hey, you said it, right? First team to clinch a playoff spot, clinch your division. So we know worst case, no matter how bad this thing might go off the rails at all, we have a home playoff game to look forward to in a couple weeks. Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, at this point, the lowest the 49ers can fall in the playoff seeding is third. And of course, right now they're in first. They control their destiny, and that will continue to be the case as long as they continue to win these games. But you mentioned something, Weston, and some concern that maybe has arisen from this past week. Look, going into this game, I think I kind of assumed that injuries were going to take their toll on the defense because, you're missing two guys in the interior. You're going up against a team who likes to run the ball in the Arizona Cardinals. And so I think there was going to be some room there for the run defense to maybe struggle a bit. But at the end of the day, I think I always expected that the offense was going to be able to, carry the load, be able to carry this team. And they did that. They scored 45 points. But what about you? Like, did this game kind of go how you were expecting, or was it better? Was it a little worse? Like, just tell me how you were feeling.
I think as expected, right? I didn't expect a 30-point blowout, even, 25-point win just because it's a divisional opponent. You mentioned everything, Steph, right? With the injuries on the interior of the defensive line, the strength of the Arizona Cardinals offense is running the football. They have a very large, strong, physical offensive line, and James Conner is still more than competent, even as he, encroaches up there in age. So felt like it went the way that it was supposed to. We talked about it last week. Like, hey, this has got trap game literally written all over it. Sandwich between Seahawks, Ravens. Now you got the number one versus the number one in the separate conferences going against each other. So it was really easy to overlook this divisional opponent. I happy to say didn't feel like they overlooked them or took them for granted. But one of the things that I still find so crazy about this year is what you just said about how, hey, we knew the offense was going to carry the defense. Like, when have we ever said that as for, in the Kyle Shanahan era? It just hasn't been the case. And that was still pleasant to see, right? Where I felt the defense was deficient for the most part, right? Especially against the run. The offense just keeps on rolling, right? Didn't falter, didn't miss a beat. It felt like really clean and really easy. On the offensive side of the ball. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but like it just did. Like, it just felt like, oh, okay, so yeah, they went up and scored on their first drive. No big deal. Like, we're totally getting this back. Not even worried about it, And anytime Arizona get a little momentum, you're like, we're gonna go down the field, and it, I think the scariest part was when Brock went down. Well, we can talk about CMC and Brock both at first, like showing injuries. You're like, here's where the wheels fall off. Like it was almost too good to be true, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like this is different. The offense carrying this team, but it's nice. Like, I love this, and as Oasis Rip says, having a stud QB just hits different. And I think we've gotten to the point of seeing Brock Purdy operate this offense that it's like we've just come to expect certain things now
Yeah.
at this point. I'm not watching and, clenching my butt cheeks or anything like I used to. Whenever I see Brock Purdy throw downfield, I'm expecting the ball to be caught. I'm no longer thinking, "Oh God, this is about to be a pick, isn't it?" It's just crazy, and I feel like it's almost to a point where it is automatic, right? Like we've come to expect it, and almost I don't want to get to a point where we're taking it for granted, because I still very much enjoy seeing it. And so I think I got to remind myself, like, man,
Yeah.
it just a year ago, like, this all felt like it was so far away from being a real thing with this team, with this offense, and we're just seeing it unfold, and it's just really cool. And I don't think, watching this offense, they're doing some historic stuff, like really
Yeah.
historic
It
stuff.
is. It's crazy.
And it's really crazy. Like I can't even believe it sometimes. Like, pinch me, man. We have CMC, we have all these weapons, and now we have Brock Purdy, who deservedly so also deserves to be in the MVP conversation, just like, Christian McCaffrey. And it's just, yeah, I just can't wrap my head around it sometimes. I can't imagine anyone being able to stop this offense, is what I'm kind of at right now.
They stop themselves, like all great offenses and defenses do, right? Like it's still football, it's still funny, right? Like everybody, a bad day, a bad bounce, it certainly happens. You mentioned like an historical pace for the offense. I'm old enough to remember the 2004 Indianapolis Colts offense that they like compare this to, in terms of like the passing marks, the total yards from scrimmage marks, both rushing, receiving, even the Rams, right, with the greatest show on turf, and compare and seeing what they're doing. And like those, you knew you were watching greatness when you were watching that. It just
Yeah.
kind of feels weird because I don't know, it's just been so long, and I just didn't think we ever deserved like that. Like last year, 20 points on offense, got it done, right? This year, 30 is the norm. And that's crazy. That's a 10-point swing, right? And it helps with the defense. It's, I don't know. Am I crazy, Steph? Like, I just still sit here, and maybe it's because I'm used to not having nice things, where I'm like, when's the other shoe drop? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to enjoy. This is a really special season with really special players, and I think we'll all agree this team is not going to look identical like next season. And you just want to see this thing go all the way through for so many reasons. It's like
Yeah.
I'm afraid to let go of being scared week to week because I just want to enjoy it. It's crazy.
I understand that feeling though, because I think, like, as 49er fans, we, even these past few years, right? Like, we've gotten so close, and I think each of those times we've felt, this is the team. This is going to be the one that's going to do it. Like, they have all the pieces. And yet this year I feel the same way, but I guess, like, in a way it feels different even than those times. Like, it I feel like I feel it even stronger now,
Yeah.
because I see this offense and how it's operating. And, Aaron Schatz, who has been keeping tabs on the DVOA throughout the season, the 49ers, he has them as the third best team tracked by DVOA through 14 games. DVOA has
Ever.
been tracked since 1981. So you can see all the teams in the past that have, kind of gotten ranked in the top 10. You mentioned the Colts team of 2004. They're not on this one, but they're on the offense one here. Let me pull that one up really quick, because as far as the offense goes, yeah, the 49ers are up there as well. And so it's really incredible to see. So here's the offense, and you see
Look at that.
2004 Colts are the fifth best in DVOA, and the 49ers are third best in DVOA. And this is just offense, right? But this is crazy. And you see the Tom Brady led
Yeah.
Patriot teams, the two teams above the 49ers right now. And there's still a few more games to go for the 49ers to even improve this. But yeah, this is what we're talking about when we say the offense is at some historic level right now. And it's pretty hard to believe, actually. Um, yeah, but at the same time, not really, because we're seeing it with our own two eyes.
I don't believe it. And I know it's happening, Steph. I see it with my own two eyes. Like my wife, my family, they pitch like, no, this is really happening. And I'm just like, can we just please not talk about this till February 12th? Like, I don't want to speak to anybody. I don't want to be outside of this bubble. It's awesome. And it's like winning in different ways and just a level of excitement around it, the margin of victories. It just, I've been a 49er fan for 34 years, and I can't remember a regular season feeling like this. And even 19 was special. You know what I mean? 11, 12, 13, they were all special in the regular
Yeah.
season. This has just got a totally different feel to it.
Yeah, it really does. And it all kind of, I think, came together, especially for the offense this past weekend against the Cardinals, in which they scored the season high 45 points. And I had this cool stat as well. The 49ers have now won 17 straight regular season games in November or later. And that's tied with the 2008, 2009 Colts and 2008, 2010 Chargers for the longest streak in the Super Bowl era.
All right.
More history, just more history.
It's just week after week, right?
Yeah,
We're gonna
basically.
see this stuff, and I'm here for it.
Basically.
Yeah, I'm here for it, Steph.
Weston, I can't wait to talk about the
Yes.
performances worthy of 49K Player of the Week this week, because it's like we're talking about the same players like every week, right? And I don't get tired of it though. So do you want to do the honors and nominate our first one here?
I would love to, Steph. I would just say my caveat is I feel like this week my list is actually narrower than it's been in past weeks, because I felt like while this you mentioned 45 points are the highest point total for the year, I felt like the win went through just a few individuals, right? It wasn't as spread out as some wins in the past. It was heavily focused. So before we get to the obvious studs on the offensive side, I love to lead in with the defense, and I'm going to start with Charvarius Mooney Ward.
Yes.
2 interceptions, couple tackles, couple pass breakups, a pick 6, 4 targets, 0 receptions, but the all-pro campaign just continues. And what I love the most about it, we talk about, what's that term? Standing on the business, right? Or standing on whatever.
Yes,
I'm not hip enough to use this term by any means, as you can tell. But he was just literally talking, what was it, on Armstead's podcast about how I just got to catch some of these and you'll see, right? I just got to catch some of these and you'll see. And did we see the first one he catches takes right to the house? Big swing in the game, right? I mean, tie ball game. Again, they're moving the ball down the field a little bit and, just stops momentum right there. And I just, I mean, Mooney Ward is just playing on an absolute different level than his peers right now for the position. And you mentioned it. So we're talking game after game after game. And I would say that for the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been straps, point blank, period. No other way to dispute it, argue it. He's been all over the opposing wide receiver. So Mooney Ward for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with this one. Kind of crazy. He was on my list too.
Oh,
who would have thought? Who would have
thought? Starting well tonight.
So he was targeted 4 times in this game, 0 catches allowed, 0 passer rating of 0 allowed in his coverage. You mentioned the 2 interceptions, and it just, on those 2 interceptions, like you could tell he did his homework, right? Not only did he do his homework, but we talked about the Eric Armstead podcast and him talking about it. Well, he prepared for the moment too. He said that he was practicing catching balls from Sam Darnold throughout the practice week, because Darnold has extra little zip in his throws.
Does. We saw it.
Yeah, I know. I guess too much heat sometimes, but good for Mooney Ward to be able to practice on that, because sometimes it is different than a jugs machine, right?
Sure.
Like,
Absolutely.
so being able to practice with him, Mooney Ward is like, I might have to do that every week now. And I hope he does. I hope he continues to do it because, yeah, 2 interceptions after I think he had 2 on the season prior to this past week. So I think the throw or catching those balls from Sam Darnold really seemed to help. And on the pick six, I mentioned this yesterday on my post game and I tweeted it out as well. He reached the top speed of 20.64 miles an hour. I didn't even know he had those types of burners on him. But it was good to see, right? And 90.8 overall PFF grade. Yeah, he's been stacking his weeks lately, and I really love to see it. I think he's making his case for all pro. I mean, certainly we 49er fans know the type of impact that he's had on this team, but he was right. It's like you kind of need the fancy stats like the
I know.
interceptions for it to count to other people to get attention nationwide and all that. So Mooney Ward, I think, is on his way to getting the recognition that he so deserves. So yes, definitely agree. Worthy of a nomination this week. Well, I'm gonna go with a guy we were just kind of talking about, and a guy that I think is a huge part of the reason that this offense is looking as great as it is. He is I don't know, it's like the common denominator or whatever. To me, it's him. He's the guy who's making it go. Players have also said as much. Kyle Shanahan has hinted as much as well. Brock Purdy, 16 of 25, 242 yards, 4 tutties, 9.7 yards per attempt. Homecoming game, not a bad one, right? Passer rating of 135.3. And just under pressure, his stats were 8 of 10, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I saw something, someone mentioned that he wasn't blitzed at all in this game. In fact, the Cardinals tried something else because, they had faced Brock Purdy in the past. They were
Yep.
like, you know what? The blitz, not working. Let's try something else with this guy. Let's just have everyone go into coverage. They had 8-man, 9 men out in coverage, and Brock Purdy was still able to throw for 242 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think that tells you just the kind of processing he has. You see it. He showed a lot of patience in this game as well. I think we're starting to see more of that as the season has progressed, and he just seems to be so in tune with the timing of everything and just the plays and where guys are going to be, the rhythm, everything. Just I don't know. He's the engine, man. He's the engine, and he was definitely deserving, I think, of a 49K player of the week nod here.
I, I don't know what else to add to that because there's no dispute from me whatsoever. I think what's so crazy is when you go back and really break up the last few games in terms of, statistically what it looks like when he's being blitzed under pressure, has time in the pocket, etc. And his numbers actually get better when there's pressure, right? Versus when he's got a clean pocket. I'm like, hey, maybe the answer is just like rush 2. I don't know. You know what I mean? And drop 9 into coverage. But it's I don't know how to say it, Steph, other than it just looked like business as usual. Even
Crazy.
after getting hit, getting his. Now I thought that was like bell rung, concussion protocol, going to
That's
be
what
the
I
end of
thought
the,
too. I was really
end of the
worried.
day for him.
Yeah.
Glad to know it was just a stinger and certainly not in his throwing shoulder because this was not a game that had that much meaning where you need to bring him back out there. Like you roll the dice and you keep going. You still have plenty of runway to chase that number 1 seed, but business as usual. Like dude just out there playing super confident football, spraying it all over. Clearly the trajectory of the ball looks a little bit different when Sam Darnold's throwing it versus Brock Purdy, but God almighty, it still gets there. I mean, evident by the touchdown to Debo, that just back shoulder, where he placed that on the field, like only Debo makes that. I shouldn't say only Debo. Only the receiver makes a play there, right? Nobody else. So that's a low risk pass, but God, it looks so pretty on tape and just yet to seem like, I don't know, just the moment doesn't seem too big, and now we've seen I don't want to say a true play. He hasn't mounted a 14-point comeback or anything along those lines, hasn't had to. But we've now seen multiple occasions where the 49ers don't have to score first, right? Like he can still go out, operate the plan. I almost called him a game manager, and that wasn't, I don't ever want to do that, but that's like a compliment in my eyes. Is just like manage the game plan, manage the flow of the game, and go make plays. And you know what he's showing me? He's making plays. The McCaffrey, the second receiving touchdown to McCaffrey, that's Brock. McCaffrey's that open down the side of the field because that's Brock. Like he bought time, scrambled out, made a play. Everybody's praising what Lamar Jackson did last night in the game. How is that any different? It's literally the same scenario. You scheme, you play your players open. So yeah, I mean, it's week after week for Brock.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, he didn't miss a beat when he had to come back in. He just business as usual, like you said.
Yeah.
He just went back in doing the same thing he was doing right before. He got a little hurt there. And I think what we saw from Sam Darnold is just the perfect example and case we've been making this entire time, where it's like, no, not anyone.
Yeah.
Because there's always these responses. Oh, I can go out there and throw for that much with these players. No, you can't, and neither can Sam Darnold. Apparently, no. I mean, no shade of Sam Darnold, but it just looks different. It doesn't have the same efficiency. It doesn't have the same, like, I don't know, just not the same. You guys don't get it. All right, We've been trying to tell you. All right, and I know Sam Darnold wasn't out there for very long. But did he complete one pass? I don't think
he completed a couple in garbage time, I believe. I think he had two.
Yeah. No,
two
I meant like
the initial. No, he was over 2.
No.
Yeah, over 2.
So I mean, I think that tells you everything you need to know right there. But people won't listen to us anyway.
No. Homeboy's got some zip on that ball, though. I was like,
too much.
I know, but I haven't seen him throw the ball in a while, and I was like, whoo, that came out hot. But this offense is so. Everything you're saying, except this offense is so predicated on timing. It is literally all about timing. And fortunately for Brock, maybe unfortunately for other quarterbacks that play in his touch just seems to be of the perfect timing, right? And it all gels through number 13, and it's so much fun watching it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that Purdy has worked on. Like, I think the throws and the accuracy of them just get better. Every week it seems. So yeah, definitely deserving. But I'm gonna let you get the next nomination in here. Who you got for us?
Speaking of business as usual, Christian McCaffrey. My God, you know what I mean? Where would we be without number 23 right now? 18 carries, 115 yards, 6.4 average, and that didn't include a 72-yard to start the game, right? So those are real numbers. With a touchdown, 5 catches. He was also the leading receiver on top of being the leading rusher for the team. So 5 for 72 with 2 touchdowns. Really scary because early in this game, he took himself out, right? And looking at that knee, I mean, you just saw it on his face. He was coming back in, even if they had to cut off like his leg at the knee. Like, I just feel like he's that guy. Like, he's literally that. He is Himothy, however they say it. Like, it is him. He is, and we say this every week, and sometimes we're like, we overlook him because it's just what we expect, and it was just hard. I mean, clearly, while Brock had himself a heck of a game, I feel like the driving factor behind this win went through Christian McCaffrey, right? Like, he was the impetus for the victory, and he just continues to do it week in, week out. You're doing something right when your quarterback is up on the podium saying that you should be MVP. I don't disagree with this in any way, shape, or form. I mean, he's approaching another area of historic territory. We're going back to the last, 49ers to have 2,000 scrimmage yards in a single season, like Frank Gore as recently as 2006, and going all the way back to Roger Craig, who's the first 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard receiver, right? Like, that's really solid company to be in terms of what you're doing for this franchise, let alone like Chase, tie for the league lead in touchdowns. You add 3 more to the total yesterday. I mean, what the only thing I wish he would do is convince Kyle to take him off the field for like 5 snaps a game. Like that's the one thing I'm missing from his game is the
Well,
coach, come on, don't burn me out. Get me out of here for a hot minute. You know what I mean?
well, I think we know that's not happening
Never.
because,
Yeah.
as you said earlier, he could have his leg cut off. He's still going to try to go out there. And it's so true. Like that dude is just such a competitor, like almost to a fault. And Technic Chic mentions the coming back in, even they had to cut off his knee, reminding me a little bit of Ronnie Lott. Yeah, I mean, Ronnie was, from what I've heard, I mean, I didn't watch Ronnie play, but he's similar, cut from the same cloth, as far as that competitive spirit and wanting to be out there no matter what. It's almost like, I think we've seen it, like when Christian McCaffrey's not out there and he's perfectly fine to go out there, he almost looks pissed on the sideline.
Yeah.
He's like, when can I go back out? It's like, geez, Christian, okay, like you can go in. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, that's the type of energy he brings. Credit to Jordan Mason. He had some nice runs in this one.
Sure.
But yeah, Christian McCaffrey, he's too good. He has 7 total touchdowns on the season against the Arizona Cardinals. Which is crazy. So he basically owns that team now. And 20 total touchdowns on the season, which is tied for Raheem Mostert. Shout out to Raheem Mostert.
49er legend Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, right? Like, it's pretty
baby.
awesome. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, we could talk all day long about the records that McCaffrey has already, beaten this year.
Yep.
And not just like franchise, but in the NFL. And he's on pace to get a few more, right? So I'm sure once we cross that bridge, we'll get to all those. But for now, this performance, 3 touchdowns, light work for the dude. So
easy
that's an easy candidate right there for
Yep.
49K player of the week. And let's see. So we got that one. Okay. I got one for you, and it's still on the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go with John Feliciano because offensive linemen need love too.
Sure
and
do.
I want to give it to him. It's tough because Trent Williams can also every single week be up for 49K player of the week. But John Feliciano, I got to give him his props. I mean, he was the 49ers highest graded offensive player for the second straight week. And this week, he had to play at right guard. Spencer Burford did not play in this one. He had a clean sheet, and it was his best game of the year, right? And it came on the right side, which if you look at the past games he had on the right, it was kind of an adjustment compared to the left, still kind of getting used to it. I know it's the Arizona Cardinals. Like, they're not exactly known for their defensive line right now. But hey, I still got to give some props to Feliciano. And I'd go as far as say he should start at right guard the rest of the season. I think, like, let's not beat around the bush.
No doubt. There's no doubt to that secondary statement. I actually have Feliciano on my list as well, and that's hard to find an offensive lineman outside of Trent on this team to nominate for such a prestigious award, of course. But I thought, Steph, did you notice during the game, to me it felt like, and then I checked it afterwards and statistically aligned to my thoughts, is they made a really concerted effort to run the ball to the right in this game, where I feel like they normally avoid it. I noticed it was setting up a lot of the play action, like the first Debo touchdown. And that was all flow right. And they had been running the ball right. And there's Debo literally by himself and for the touchdown. But 14 out of 25 of the total rushing attempts went right. So that statistically, I didn't measure that against other games, but I'm willing to bet if had I gone back and looked at the comparison week over week over week, I'd bet that'd be the highest number in rush totals, right? And I think it's, what does Kyle love to do? Just put things on tape, right? Like, he just wants to put something on tape. Like, we can run both ways. Don't you pay attention to that nonsense. But it looked, who looked really good running to the right? Jordan Mason. As much as McCaffrey is that guy, but I feel like Mason is just that, like, no BS, no dancing, no vision. I'm just going right through the hole.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a monster. Like, he's an absolute moose. I feel like, hey, we want to run right. Like, that's the guy. Like, that aligns to the style because the hole might not be there long. Just get there. You know what I mean? But yeah, Feliciano played now consecutive weeks, right? Playing really, really, really good football. And I do agree he should be the starting right guard go forward.
Interesting enough that you mentioned like you noticed more runs to the right side in my preview show, and I don't know why, like I just found this stat that the 49ers run to the left side 60% of the time going into that game on Sunday. So I'd be curious to know how much that changed after this week, or how much they ran to the right side. But that's interesting. And yeah, I mean, sometimes all of those things seem pretty intentional from Kyle, right? Like, yeah, he wants to put it on tape. So who knows what he's cooking? Maybe like you said, he was he was getting ready for that, play action play to Debo Samuel on the touchdown, right? I don't know.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Feliciano definitely appreciated. I mean, I didn't know what to think of that move when they first made it in the offseason. I was like, yeah, sure. It's like, okay, I don't really know much about him, but he could be like someone who can fill in. I don't know. He's a veteran kind of thing. But yeah, he's exceeded my expectations. And I think going into this like final stretch of the season, it's been a really nice addition to
Cool.
this offensive line, and a new wrinkle to the offensive line. I mean, it's never too late to make some changes to your team if you feel like, hey, a player's really starting to show us some stuff. Let's get him in there and see what he can do. He got the opportunity with injuries, but I think he's shown us what he can do, and I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. So shout out Feliciano. But yeah, do you have another nominee here?
I
You
don't.
do not.
I do not. I told
Interesting.
you my list was
Interesting.
very thin.
Okay.
I have somebody I would give flowers that I'm assuming is probably who you might have
Well,
on the
this one,
list.
yeah. So it was tough for me, right? Like I think we all kind of know where we're going with it. Debo
Yeah,
Samuel, he had two, he had two touchdowns in this
I
game. It's
know.
like, how do you not like, give him, the nod for 49K Player of the Week candidate at
Yeah,
least? He had two touchdowns. Like,
I
that's nothing
know.
to sneeze at. But he only had 48 yards receiving. So it wasn't like this big game. Like, honestly, if you look at anyone else not named Purdy and Christian McCaffrey, like the stat line's not crazy, right?
Yeah,
Um, but just on, virtue of him having two
2 touchdowns.
touchdowns,
Yeah.
it's like, fine, like Debo, you can slip in there if you
Yeah.
want. So I'll put him on there. And what I thought was cool. So like Technic Sheik points out, it was the light jog on that Debo touchdown for me. Remember, like, I mean, we've talked about this with Debo before. It's kind of like a well documented thing that when Debo doesn't have the ball in his hands, he kind of does not give 100%. And it almost was like they, by design, had Debo jog
Yeah.
jog before, like, hitting the second gear and saying, okay, go. And then Purdy lobbing him that ball because he was wide the hell open. Do you kind of feel like that
Yeah.
was
Oh my
by
god.
design?
I mean, even the
So
announcers,
funny.
right? Like, I
It's
think it
so
was
funny.
Charles Davis talking about it. Where, by the way, that's a whole nother ball game. I thought Charles Davis, and I love Charles Davis, and I thought he was awful during this game. But that being said, you had like him being like, you don't just forget to cover Debo Samuel, right? Like there's confusion created through that.
Yeah.
And to your, I know for a fact that's the scripted play because you just said, right, Debo, he'll jog it out when the ball's not in his hands. Let me assure you that this play was designed intentionally for him. He knew it and knew that was the sell. Reminds me back in the day, we used to call it the dead man play, where you'd have this like tight end. It was always a goal line
Hmm.
play. You'd have a tight end on the opposite end. He'd act like he's blocking. He'd fall down intentionally in front of the defender and then get up and just scurry to the back pylon where he'd be standing alone every single
Yeah.
time, wide
Kittle's
open.
done that.
Yeah, right. We called it the dead man play. This was just a far sexier version of that because it was going to Debo.
Yeah. So, Debo, two touchdowns, fine, man. We'll let you, we'll let you in on
Yeah,
being
you squeak in,
nominated
buddy.
for,
Yeah,
yeah. But he's been awesome, as we know, since the bye week, these last few weeks, he's been on fire. So can't forget that. And shout out Mizell? Is that how you say it? Yeah, and I'm so glad, just a sidebar, that StreamYard lets me check out Twitter comments now.
That's
Finally,
sick,
again,
right? Finally, yeah.
they used to have it. They disabled that feature for some reason, like Twitter didn't allow it or something, and now it's back. So I appreciate that, and thank you, Oasis Rips, for watching this entire time. Now it is time to vote for 49K Player of the Week. And yeah, this week we didn't have as many names, but that's okay. Maybe it'll make the voting a little bit easier. Of
Yeah.
course, you still kind of have to decide between some tough ones, but let us know in the comments who you would like to vote as 49K Player of the Week for Week 15. And I'm going to tally it up as I always do. Here are the names for, Miguel. Sorry, Miguel. All right. Oh, okay, Mizell's daughter's name. Nice name. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So 49K Player of the Week candidates for Week 15: Mooney Ward, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, John Feliciano, and Deebo Samuel. Let us know in the comments who you would like to vote for Week 15. In the meantime, though, while you guys vote, Weston and I are going to put some players on notice. I have a thought. I have a thought on
I bet I got the
one.
same thought.
Yeah, I have a thought on one particular player. Okay, 2 weeks in a row, he has fumbled. Technically, it wasn't ruled a fumble this past Sunday by rule, but for me, in my head, it was a fumble. And even if by rule it wasn't, it too close for comfort, and
Yep.
and then came after a week of him fumbling and it going out of bounds, so right now it's just a little shaky for my liking with Ronnie Bell returning punts. And we're still some weeks away from having Ray McLeod back from injured reserve. So in the meantime, it's going to continue to be Ronnie Bell. The 49ers don't really have another option unless they want to risk Deebo Samuel even more and have him do punt returns too, which I don't think they're exactly considering at this point in time. Look, Ronnie, I simply just want you to fair catch it. Like, that's it. I don't care if the ball is on the one. Like, at this point, let's just get out of there unscathed and unfumbled, okay? Just get the ball. That's all we need. We know Brock Purdy and McCaffrey and this offense can handle the rest.
Yep.
You just catch it, and we're good.
Yeah. God. And it's I think we're all fans of Ronnie Bell, right? And what we saw in the preseason, and still would love to see him get a few more reps at wide receiver and what he might do with the ball in his hands in a more conventional manner. But fielding punts ain't it for him, is the way that I'm looking at this. So you got two rules. If you are outside of the 10-yard line, you are fair catching. If your heels are inside of your own 10-yard line, you're just getting out of the way. I don't care if they down it at the 6-inch line. It's just this Ray not being here it's a problem. It's a problem in a lot of different ways. It's a problem because you feel like you got to put Deebo on kickoff, right? It's a problem because you now have a rookie out there returning your punts. And I think Ray's contribution, while it doesn't always show up in the stat column, it's about reliability in some of those areas and not giving it a second thought. You talked earlier about I no longer think this is going to be an intercepted pass, when Purdy drops back. I look at it like, gosh, every time they punt, I'm like, they're going to fumble this ball back, aren't they? This is going to happen right now. I know it is.
Weston, what was it a few weeks ago that we were giving on notice to? Was it not Ray McLeod?
Yeah, but you gotta smack him around.
No, I just think it's hilarious because I think we took Ray McLeod for granted a little bit,
as we always do.
Hey man, just come back, get healthy, and once you're off injured reserve, please come back
ASAP.
Hey, it just goes to show, right? Like,
yeah,
Ray McLeod is he's safe at returning, and sometimes that's all you need. I think that's what I'm kind of learning. But yeah, I mean, Ronnie Bell, he's got to work on it. I think he will work with Brian Schneider and hopefully get that cleaned up. Something else the 49ers need to get cleaned up that I'm putting on notice is missed tackles.
Yeah.
Season high 16 missed tackles in week 15. That's after coming off of 14 missed tackles against Seattle and 12 against the Eagles. So this is a concerning trend now at this point with the missed tackles. And I got news for the 49ers. If they plan to miss tackles again against the Baltimore Ravens, you will pay.
Sure will.
You will pay. Look, Keaton Mitchell, I feel terrible ACL injury. He's not going to be playing that game. But if you think you're going to be able to miss tackles on guys like Lamar, even Gus Edwards, don't you forget about Gus Edwards, because he is, I don't know, he's one of those tough runners.
He'll
He's hard to
punish you.
bring down. Yes, exactly. That's not the kind of back, not the kind of team that you want to be having sloppy, half-assed tackling on. And that's what we've been seeing these past few weeks. So I don't know what it is, what's going on with them. I don't know if it's them being tired. I don't know, but they need to figure this out, because they might find themselves having a really hard time on defense, come next week, Monday, if they plan to do the same.
Yeah. It's funny, you chalk it up to you're talking missed tackles, and they have been incrementally worse over the last 3 weeks. But this is not the first time we've talked about this. We've also been talking about this during the 3-game losing streak, right? That and I think it's been happening all season. And early in the season, I had, I think the excuse that I implanted for the team was a little bit of a new scheme, a little bit of new wrinkle, a little bit of out of position, bad pursuit angles, etc. That's not an excuse anymore. You're too far along in the season, in that scheme, you're accustomed to it. I'm actually going to take this same concept a step further, and I'm going to specifically point to Fred Warner. And this is an issue, guys. Like, you're at the forefront of this missed tackle conversation. Fred, you came out and said it yourself, and I respect him for doing so. I'm the standard, right? Like he said, I have to be the standard. And I know Fred will get it right. Like, I'm not, Fred Warner, blah, 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 I'm never going to call him all pro Fred again. Like, it's none of that. It's just, this all starts and stops with you. And what I've noticed is more from Dre, like, nobody raps anymore. Nobody raps. They just, Dre just wants to punch at the ball. Fred punches, but he's still like, is trying to rap when he's doing it. Fred's problem's been more like over pursuit, poor angles, like out of position, all things that are not common Fred Warner behavior on the field, right? So that's why I feel very confident that he'll get it right. And I don't know what's attributing to it, but I mean, let's just call this what it is. Like, the play from the linebacker position over the last couple of weeks has not really been that strong. I thought the D-backs have been playing better. I thought the defensive line did a really nice job yesterday. I know we're going to talk about, a lot of rushing yards given up, but I think a lot of that was attributed to missed tackles. And guess who the biggest culprits of that were? So, I've just taken it a step further with the missed tackles, because I think it does tie directly back to those two guys who tend to be the tone setters, right? And now they're setting the tone just in a totally different capacity. And luckily, like you said, this was against the Arizona Cardinals, where probably wasn't going to catch up with you. You got the same thing against Baltimore going into the playoffs. It's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and look, I've seen Fred have some of his best games against these kind of games that's coming up, right? Like this game against the Ravens, when it's like two best teams going up against each other, he steps it up on a different level. So I'm kind of expecting that from Fred Warner next week on Christmas Day. And I hope that, it trickles down to the rest of the defense as well. I mean, like I said, they have to get it together, right? So yeah, I think maybe the 1 day extra rest that could help them. I don't know. I hope. But they need to get back to those fundamentals on the tackling. But they could do it. I mean, it's really just I don't know.
They didn't forget how to tackle, Steph. There's
exactly.
something there. It's probably fatigue. I think the day rest helps.
Yeah.
And then
I think so.
also listen, they didn't have to play the second half of the fourth quarter, right? Right. So there's a couple,
Yeah,
a
sure.
few less blows, a little bit like blows there. And, push comes to shove in this Baltimore game, depending upon what happens tonight in the Philly Seattle game, that game might not matter much other than it's the number one versus the number one, right? But it might be inconsequential for both in terms of number one seeds, right? Because you have that game buffer on the other top teams plus the tiebreaker. So you almost have a 2-game buffer against those teams. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But we need to get
Yeah,
it right.
I mean, yeah, we will see. And, I almost wonder if the missed tackles is because subconsciously the defense is like, well, we know the offense is going to score points. We don't
Yeah.
need to try as hard as we used to. Like,
Yeah. Let's take a break. This is
yeah.
an easy game.
Yeah, we've been busting our ass for years, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think they'll get it right this week. I'm not too worried about it, but again, putting it on noticed it. All right. We have this Monday Night Football game coming up. I'm sure we're all going to be watching very intently, happening, going to kick off in a few moments here. So, Weston, who's your vote for 49K Player of the Week?
Christian McCaffrey.
Shoo. Wow. All right. Well, we got votes for Mooney Ward, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, but the 49K Player of the Week for Week 15 is Mooney Ward, and definitely deserves it. It feels weird because, like, in a game where this offense scored 45 points, we're talking about the missed tackles, and like Cardinals scored like 29 points. Mooney Ward still able to shine through, and you gotta love it because yes, he called his number, and hopefully he'll have more days like these coming up. So yeah, appreciate all of you guys that tuned in. Make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Not just my channel, but Weston's as well. We're Talking Football podcast. Make sure to find that on YouTube. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Enjoy that Monday Night Football game. Eagles, Seahawks. We'll all be watching intently. For now, have a good rest of your Monday. Peace.